good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are around the world. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Cristina Leston-Bandeira, and I'm Chair of IPEN, the International Parliament Engagement Network, which co-hosts these seminars on public engagement with the IPU for the Public Engagement Hub. And I'm really pleased to welcome you to this seminar, which will be on citizens-initiated legislation, focusing on a case study that sounds really interesting in Thailand on the Clean Air Act. This seminar is part of a series of seminars we've been organising since about 2022, I think, so it's over 2 years now, and its seminars explores issues of public engagement with Parliament following the publication of the Global Parliamentary Report in 2022, which you can access online. And I think Lisa will just put the link to the report in the chat so you can access it that way. Before I introduce our speakers today and the topic, just a few housekeeping rules. The seminar will be translated into French. And so if your preferred language is French, then please click on the translation button at the bottom of your screen and select your language. And throughout the seminar, please keep your mics muted unless you're asking questions, obviously, unless you're speaking. But if your broadband allows it and you're happy to have your camera on, then we always prefer if you have your camera on, because it's really nice to see faces on the screen, but it's entirely up to you. So these are our housekeeping rules. So I'll just introduce the topic. So as many of you will know, citizen-initiated legislation has become quite popular in a few parliaments in recent years. And there's really well-known cases like the right to water in the EU, which was a bill which was initiated by citizens and then made all the way through. But there's also plenty of other examples in other parliaments. They're not always seen as very successful because it's an area where there's lots of rights and opportunities, but they don't necessarily go through the whole process and end up as an act. And so the case we're looking at today is very interesting for that, but also because it's developed in partnership with civil society, as we'll hear, and that's a really interesting element in here, which you don't necessarily see in other parliaments. So I'll introduce our speakers, and I apologize straight away to any Thai speakers because my Thai language skills are not great, but I'll do my best to introduce them and pronounce their names properly. But we have two excellent speakers who know a lot about this, who have been heavily involved in the passing of this initiative and then act, hopefully act for the future. And so we have Professor Kanongnij Sribuaiam, who's the first Vice Chair of the Clean Air Ad-hoc Committee, and she's accompanied by Weenarin Lulitanonda, who's a co-founder of the Thailand Clean Air Network, known as Thailand Khan, and she's a member of the Clean Air Act Ad-hoc Committee. And so I'll give them the floor in a minute. So they'll do a presentation presenting them the process, how it works and how it's been going through. And then we'll follow up with some questions. We'll probably open up for Q&A straight away. And we're very much hoping to give plenty of time for questions. So if you have any questions, just put them down, and then when I ask you to come forward, you can either put them on the chat and I can read them for you, or you can come up on the screen and ask them yourselves. So without further ado, I'll pass on the floor, as it were, the screen, to our colleagues in Thailand, and we're really excited to hear all about the Clean Air. It's a really difficult thing to say, Clean Air Act, isn't it? Maybe in Thai it's easier to say. In English it's really difficult to say. But yes, so you can we'll share the screen and then we'll see your own presentation. Thank you very much.
Everyone, I'm Kanongnij from Thailand. Thank you, Professor Cristina. Thank you for your introduction. I would like to present the Thai Citizens Legislative Initiative in case of the Clean Air Act, which is ongoing now. Next slide, please. According to the Thai Constitution, the present one, we try to make it higher level of public participation to enhance the participatory democracy by adding the provision on the right to initiative of citizens within this present Constitution of Thailand. Under Article 133, it allows 10,000 voters to propose a legislative bill to the House of Representatives. Also, this constitution asks the subordinate law, which is called the Initiative Process Act, to do the details. For these two laws, there are certain conditions according to the two laws. In doing such a process, especially the first one, the content within the initiative law must be related to either the rights and liberties of the Thai citizen or related to duties of the state. This is the first condition. And the second one is that it should be accompanied by the bill's principles. What are the principles of the initiative legislation that you propose with the rationale for introducing this kind of law and the analysis and the summary of the bill itself. Then the initiators, at least 20 people, must prepare this. Next slide. And submit it to the parliament in order to get the permission to invite the eligible voters to sign for the petition to support this submitting proposed bill. So this called signature collection. Okay. After that, since once the signatures are complete, then you collect the 10,000 signatures and come back to the parliament and submit them to the parliament. And after that, it's the process of public hearing, meaning the parliament will announce through the website of the parliament, inviting all the people who are interested to send the opinions, etc. And finally, the whole legislation, the initiative legislation, gonna be comprehensively and systematically accessed through the whole part of the draft. Next slide, please. Under the whole system, now we have 7 drafts of Clean Air Bill coming from one from the cabinet, and the other 5 come from political parties, and ours also one of the 7. So these 7 have different background of thinking, have different paradigms, principles, and also approaches. So how to put them together? We have the Ad-hoc Committee on the Clean Air Bill. We have total 39 committee members. But that's large, and there are other consultant, etc., and staff as well. So finally, we end up by appointing 2 subcommittees. The first committee responsible for the framework and the principle of the whole 7 draft, how to tune the whole differences and come into the consensus at certain level. The second subcommittee is on the part of liabilities and enforcement of the draft law. So finally, we will be end up by having the only one single clean air bill as the final version. Well, the thing that we found out from the beginning until now during the process is that this draft law, the final version should be and should not be. On the left, you can see what should be. First of all, the public interest should be over the private interest as common value. The second one, it should be the management for clean air as a focus, not repeating the air pollution base as usual. And the third one is must guarantee, the draft law must guarantee people's right to clean air, including other fundamental rights like right to life, right to health, right to environment as such, and also should cover both substantive rights and procedural rights. And next one, this should be done to solve the structural problems since the PM 2.5 is regarded as the very complicated and structural problems as the tip of the iceberg, that when you deal with this kind of high complication, you must design specific to resolve to solve that kind of problem. And finally, this final version should be delivered the clean air justice as one type of environmental justice. On the right side, what should not be, and we always give a big warning always all the time that we are working together. The first one is that it should not be the form over the substance. Just have one piece of legislation doesn't mean that you can use or practice in the wrong way and not use it for the merit of it. And compromising too much is not good always, because since it's very complicated, and then parties might end up by, oh, we compromise that and this and those, and finally good things be devalued and the merit of the clean air not exist anymore. And finally, it shouldn't be used as the greenwashing. Okay, next slide, please. So finally, we can have two different groups that have quite different approaches and different ways of thinking. On one side, it's a government bill and the political parties bill that still hang on, for example, some and most on conventional or top-down or common government base or air pollution base, while our citizen-led bill is more innovative, bottom-up, right-based, and clean air-based. Next slide, please. So for the civil society's contribution to this process of initiative draft law, we can say that there are a lot more than what we thought of before, both inside and outside the parliament. Inside, we are the first group of clean air movement in the country. We have been studying for a long time. We have the certain number of members sitting in the committee. We have altogether 13 from 39 seats in the committee, substantial enough to make it as a quorum of the meeting. We also have different discipline, different background from academic, researchers, social movement, media. We also act as the knowledge provider while being the law drafter at the same time. We have a lot of time that explain academically and giving some reasonings, etc., while explaining and exchanging in order to draft the certain solution. Also, it's the multidisciplinary backgrounds that helps a lot for our team to be able to communicate well. And also because of our experiences as the think tank before. So thanks to that kind of experience. So we are kind of capable to deal with the situation that sometimes is quite difficult. At the same time, on the outside the parliament. There are certain pressure groups. Most of our friends are among them. Watchdogs, complaint, protests, or along the same time, along the same line, we have certain court cases that accompany with the same issues. Also, there are certain groups of our friends who submit the letters directly on the issues they concern to the committee about certain content of the draft law. We also have certain seminars on controversial issues that blow out from the meeting. Somehow, some questions are still hanging and not yet find a solution. We also have, as the think tank, we in parallel, we arrange the events that bring the awareness, building active citizen on clean air. We have media or influencers who help us in communicating with society at large. And also the next election, even though it's about 3 years to come, but I think that's much enough to make most politicians and government officers to be realized that finally, whatever this final version of the new law will have influences on different groups of people in the same society. So whatever they are doing now will have impact short-term, long-term in the future and at present. Also, our friends around the world put kind of watchdog, as a global watchdog, global agenda. International coordination and support also sent through us and support us. So thank you very much for that. And IPU is one of them as well. Thank you very much for arranging this opportunity. So I think I stop here. Some might be already answer your questions, but if not, but please ask me later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Kanongnij. That is really, really fascinating, really interesting. I took lots of notes and I've got lots of questions. So for now, I'll abuse my power as chair and ask those questions if that's okay. But please, everyone in the audience, if you want to ask questions, just click on raise your hand at the bottom. So is it on React? I never know now. They're always changing. Yes, under React on your screen, depending on the version of Zoom you have, you should be able to see raise your hand. And if you raise your hand, then I'll call you in. Or you can ask your questions in the chat. And thank you very much for Senator Dr. Hussein Mohammed Dahir from Somalia, who's already shared his experiences in Somalia about the lack of mechanisms for citizen participation there. Although there are some informal mechanisms at local governance level, which is really interesting. And the citizens initiative initiatives, yeah, not many parliaments have, but they have become much more popular in the last few years with constitutions bringing in these initiatives. Yeah, but I've got lots of questions if that's okay. So when you talk about the 7 drafts, for instance, of the Clean Air Bill, can you say a little bit more about what are these 7 drafts? So is it one draft you brought in as a group, with your initiative, with your bill, with your draft, and then the parties submitted their own drafts? Is that what it is? Or where do the 7 drafts come from? Where they come from? Is that clear, my question?
Come from different proponents. The first come from the cabinet.
Okay.
Okay. The second come from political party called Palang Pracharat.
Yeah.
So the third one come from another party.
Yeah.
Called Pheu Thai, and
yeah.
The fourth one come from another political party.
Yeah.
Called Kanongnij.
Yeah.
And so another one like that. And our draft is only one citizen-led proposed by the initiative process.
Brilliant. And so what I'd like to know, so to untangle that a little bit, did you submit your citizen initiative and then the parties, the cabinet submitted their own drafts for it? So did your draft, your own draft that you submitted, did that cause the parties to submit their own drafts?
Yeah, I can say that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
great.
we are the one who triggered the whole
Yeah,
different groups of people
brilliant. Yeah,
to
yeah,
do that. Yeah.
yeah. Again, I mean, I'm asking these questions because that's really important, because it's about the power to set the agenda and you know, to bring even these issues to the table, and then forcing the government, the cabinet, and the other parties to think about that and submitting their own drafts. So yes, I just want to clarify that. And then in terms of the committee, there's 39 members of the committee, and you said, did you say you've got 13 members just for yourself, for your organization? That's how I understood. And so the other members, presumably they are from political parties represented in Parliament. Yeah. And so and does it work like just a normal committee in Parliament? You know, with a clerk taking notes and all those things. Does it have the same rights as other committees?
In the initiative process act that the proportion of citizen-led bill must be 1/3 of the whole seats in the committee, and that's why we end up by that number.
Yeah. Okay. Great. And do you also have voting rights? So when you come to decisions within the committee, do you as a group have the same voting rights as the members, the MPs?
That already, and that's why I become the first vice chair.
Yeah.
Because of the voting. Before the agenda was not like that. They tried to propose one politician to become the first vice chair, but the group of citizen-led members disagree. So they propose my name, Kanongnij, as the competitor. In that case, the rule says that if there are more than one competitor, it needs to do the voting. So finally, there was the vote, and I won the vote that I become the first vice chair.
Yeah, that is so interesting, really interesting, because from all the systems that I know, usually when the citizen initiative is proposed, then the citizens are not part of the decision making process, if you see what I mean. It goes to the parties, to the MPs, and they decide about it, which is often one of the problems with these systems, because then, you know, it's not really a real right, because people can initiate but can't be part of the decision making process. So that's really interesting, and it's really important to highlight that you are part of the decision making process. And I'll just ask one more question, and then there's a few questions in the chat, so I'll come to those. Will it then go to the plenary after? Well, actually, I won't ask that question because there's a really good question in the chat related to that. So I'll stop with my questions now. I still have lots of questions, but I'll go to the chat. We've got a question from Andy Richardson asking, does the ad hoc committee also include industry groups or only civil society groups? Has there been much industry lobbying, and how has this influenced the process?
So in the ad hoc committee, no, because every representative is it's us, 13 members, and then it's representatives from the cabinet or the political parties. However, industry groups have been sending their lobbyists coming in under the guise of advisors, and so they do express their express views, but they do not have the rights to vote because they are not part of the committee member.
Yeah, so they can submit evidence or talk in hearings and that sort of thing. Is that what you're saying in terms of advice?
Come every weekly meetings and come.
Okay.
So it's a
Okay.
back and forth with them all the time. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, so quite a fluid process. So they clearly there and being involved. Okay.
Yeah, a bit too fluid at times. Yeah, but they can voice their concerns and issues, but
Okay.
they cannot vote, again, just to say they're not part of the committee. They're just advisors.
Okay.
Views. Yep.
And is this process the same? I don't know if there's been another citizen initiative in Thailand or not, or whether it's the first one. Is this the process for all of this type of legislation, or is it just unique to this particular bill?
For all citizen-led legislation.
Yeah,
not just unique to the Clean Air Act.
Yeah, great. I've got a question from Omoyowa. Well, he's got two questions, and I'll go to his second question first. And he's asking, which I think is really the crucial thing in here and in any citizen initiative legislation in any parliament, which is, how does this process differ from a members initiated bill? So what are the key differences, if there are any, from a normal standard MP's bill?
In some slides, I think the differences in the content of the bill. I put it. You asked about the process difference.
The process.
On the process. Okay. If the process are similar, according to the Constitution of Thailand, there are 4 ways to initiate the draft law to the parliament. The first one is the cabinet. The second one is the MPs, and the third one is the citizen. So very similar in terms of both MPs and citizen initiates have a similar process, meaning you have to draft it first, and certain numbers of the initiators must submit it to the parliament. You have to get the public hearing and so on. Only small differences. Maybe the MP bill doesn't need to go through the collecting signatures like that. So it's much easier for them. For us, it's more difficult because we need to get the signatures of voters 10,000. But for the MPs, I'm not sure what numbers, but it's very few. Maybe 20 or something like that. I'm not sure. Okay.
That's interesting that MPs also need signatures. Okay, so it's a very similar process. It's just the initiation of it. It's different from what you're saying. And so will your bill then go to the plenary, to the main chamber, and be voted by all MPs within Parliament?
Going to be the only one single draft or bill altogether. So we will send the product of this committee going to be single draft and send it to the plenary.
So and then everyone votes on it, all the MPs. And again, that's really powerful. I think we don't need the slides now, thank you. Again, that's really powerful in terms of process, because you consolidate that draft bill within the committee. So you've got the agreement within the committee, on what the content should be, and that sort of locks in the different parties, the government and all of that. And then when it goes to the chamber, you've got more of a chance to pass it through. So that is a really interesting feature of your process, which you don't necessarily see in other parliaments, because often citizens initiated legislation, they sort of die, as it were, at that last stage. So you've got all that work, but then because there's not the commitment, the agreement, the consensus from all the parties, it doesn't get through. So it's really interesting, you know, the role of your committee in this, and the role that you have as a movement in a committee is a really added value there in terms of making the process more consensual, working with the government and all the parties, and then leading to an outcome. Another question that Omoyawa had was, what's the procedure for taking a citizen-initiated bill that was not passed in the previous assembly forward into the next assembly? So is there a way of having a citizen-initiated bill, say in the last parliament, and to take it to now? So say, for instance, your bill doesn't actually become an act before the elections. Would you be able to carry it on for the next parliament after the elections? I think that's what Omoyawa's question was, but correct me if I'm wrong.
Depends on what happened. If the parliament was cancelled by if there's something wrong and the prime minister announced to dissolve the parliament, then all the bills belonging to MPs will be disappear.
Yeah.
Except the initiative bill by citizen.
Oh, really?
Will stay, but stay at the door, the entrance door of the parliament.
Okay.
Not disappear, just like that. Okay.
Yeah.
So it means that the next group of say politician, cabinet will come back, take the office, and decide to pick it up within 3 months, I think, to resubmit to the new parliament. And if not, then our group, citizen group, who is the owner of the bill, can do that instead. So this is the right to initiate under the Initiative Process Act, plus under the Constitution of Thailand, give the higher level of rights than the MP's right in terms of the disappear or not disappear according to
I know it's really,
that's the privilege. I think
that is
privilege.
That is quite extraordinary. Yes. So you wouldn't need to get the 10,000 signatures again. It would just be there waiting for the process to carry on.
No need to go back to find more 10,000 because we are all the time citizen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The status, the legal status of being citizen always be there. So we never been disappear or dissolve or whatever. No expiration.
No, exactly. You've got your status there.
Yeah.
But I mean, the members, the politicians themselves, they might change. So there might be, elections and they're not the same people. So presumably you would need to have a new committee set up, which might not have the same people.
We will meet a new friend. We renegotiate, we reconvince, we re-educate them and join, why not? It's better than just being disappeared, just like that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of cases out there where the initiatives, they just disappear, as you say, or die, nothing happens to them. If a parliament finishes, then nothing happens to them. And this applies to other things. There's a question in the chat about this type of tools, and other types of tools similar to this is petitions. I mean, petitions can be lots of things, but often can also be about initiating legislation. And there's lots of parliaments where this type of initiatives, when there's a new parliament, they just die and then they have to restart, which from a citizen perspective is really, really hard. Because as you just said, you brilliantly said, we are still citizens. And yeah, so you don't need to show, and your legitimacy is not linked to the election. Your legitimacy is because you're a citizen. But yeah, not many parliaments do that. And there's lots of questions in the chat. So I'm going to try to focus again on the chat. Senator Dr. Hussein from Somalia saying, is it possible that due to the country's governance challenges, while in Thailand, citizens have demonstrated the power of public advocacy to influence legislation, such as the ongoing push for Cleaner Air Act? And I'll let you answer that, but I think that's very clear that yes, that you have been able to do that despite the challenges. So I think Senator Dr. Hussein comes from a country where there's a lot of challenges, and there's not those initiatives for citizens. You come from a country where there might be some challenges, but those initiatives exist, and it sounds like you think they're working well. Don't know if you want to comment on that.
Exact question that was actually asked. Could you repeat that briefly?
I think it's more like a statement just to reaffirm that despite all the challenges or political instability that you may have, that the right from the citizen is clearly being demonstrated, from all the things we've been discussing. I think it's just reaffirming really what we're saying here. I'll ask you another question from Ines Stephanie, who's asking, what are the costs of the citizen-initiated legislation? For example, public participation, how is this undertaken? Is it in person? Is it online? Who bears the costs?
Bear the cost.
Yeah.
To get 10,000 signatures, it might all sound good on paper. To get 10,000 signatures, we did this all throughout COVID.
Wow.
Okay. And it sounds good on paper. It was all done analog, meaning we had to actually physically go up to individuals. Nobody wanted you to go close to them when everybody's fearful of COVID.
Yeah.
To get a piece of paper, a form signed, and they had to give us their national ID, a copy of a signed national ID to go with that piece of paper from every single individual.
Yeah.
That was how painful it actually was. We actually ended up getting 20,000 to 22,000.
Yeah.
And the thing that helped us was there was a change of legislation on the way you can initiate legislation into Parliament that supported electronic submission. But the reality of the matter is, by the time we came to actually submit, we were informed that although maybe 2/3 of what we got were electronically submitted, we were required to print every single page. Over 20,000 pieces of paper, even more. We killed a lot of trees just to do that. And physically submit that in. So it might sound good on paper. In reality, it was extremely, extremely painful. And everything was done basically through our own individual savings, because this is no one's paying to the work that we do, right?
Yeah, that does sound quite hard. I mean, it makes me think of petitions in the 19th century, 20th century, even when we didn't do things online. We're very much going door to door to ask for the signatures, and there's a little bit of recruitment and mobilizing people, because it does have that role also, doesn't it? Mobilizing people for the cause. But then if you're also doing that online and then you have to print it all out, that sounds like a lot of work. And asking for the ID number, I'm really pleased you mentioned that, because again, in a lot of countries, that's a requirement. In most systems, that's a requirement for people's ID, which is fine in terms of checking these people are, but it's one of the things that may get into, in a way, in terms of accessibility, because it makes it less accessible. It is complicated to get the signatures. It's not an easy thing to do, as you've demonstrated. And
because it's very sensitive. There's a personal security issue. I mean, most people will not give away their national ID copies because, it can be used for many dubious things.
Of course, and in itself, it can be, you know, something people don't want to do, don't want to be involved. And we've got a great question from Alex Scales. Alex, I presume you want me to read it. Do you want to say it yourself? Yeah. Okay. So Alex says, a follow on Andy's question, is the relationship with industry, so industry offering advice, dialogue in meetings, but no voting rights on the committee, is that part of the design of this initiative specifically, or would it be expected across other citizen-initiated legislations due to the Constitution? I think we've discussed this before, and I got a feeling that this process is the general process that is for all bills. But then he asked, and if so, how are the citizen representatives on the committee selected? That's a great question. Because obviously you have 13 members there. So how are they selected? How you decide that? And he says his interest is twofold. I am wondering the extent to which industry representatives could act in a personal capacity on the committee and whether this brings risks with itself, but also how inclusive the selection process was. And are there any lessons to share on maintaining momentum? So I think that's a different area, isn't it, Alex? That's a bit more about maintaining momentum for everything to keep going. So first question about selection, how were people selected from your 13? And has it brought risks, as in some people just speaking for themselves personally rather than globally for the movement? And yeah, how inclusive was the selection process? And the other one is about maintaining momentum. Over to you.
For the on our group anyway, the citizen group, by law, it has to be Ajahn Kanongnij talked about how to initiate law, there needs to be 20 people who initiated it. It has to be 13 people from the 20.
Okay.
So it's,
self-selection then. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's anybody who really cares about this, was the first 20 people who really cared about it would have signed up.
Yeah.
As for the other parties, the party have their own way of selecting who would be represented.
Yeah.
And then the second question was about industry representation. Was that what it was? About?
It's about keeping the momentum. So keeping the momentum of it going. So you outline, I was interested in that, you outline lots of activities that you've undertaken. Seminars, media protests, also all of those things have. I'm not sure that was what Alex was thinking, but linking to that, have those things helped keeping the momentum, the support from everyone in keeping the discussions going in the committee? Now, how easy or difficult has it been to keep everyone on board?
And different mindsets, okay? Sometimes in some good days, we have very good conversation and communication. But in some bad days, we have fight a lot.
Oh dear.
Back and forth. Yeah. But we need to work together. So I don't know for the other sides, but for our group, we try to maintain the atmosphere in the meeting, first of all. Secondly, because we are academic people, we teach in universities, so it's a kind of teaching courses, extraordinary classes while drafting and convincing and using psychological kind of methodology to apply with this kind of very, very unusual meetings.
Yes, I can imagine.
So yeah, it's difficult, I can say, but we keep doing. We are. I think I can survive and we can finish our work for the successful common ground to come. Yeah.
And can you give us, maybe you said that in your presentation, but I can't remember now, so apologies if you have. Can you give us a sense of time? When did it all start? When did you first submitted the initiative? And when do you hope it will become an act? Do you have an idea?
or it doesn't say any expiration or limits of time. It depends on the difficult or easy, how complicated, or or so many issues to discuss. Our draft law is very complicated.
Yeah.
Really. And we did start at the beginning, I think January this year until now. It's about 9 months or so. We expect to speed up the fastest rate that we can do to finish up, so it can submit the final draft to the parliament is about at the end of this year, but I cannot promise. This is the fastest that we can do. I hope we can do. Not faster than that.
No, yeah, I mean, to me that sounds really, really good. To me, that sounds like quite a fast process, actually. If we think of the right to water in the EU, for instance, I might get it wrong, but it took at least 6 years to get through from, citizen initiative actually being approved. So it's probably even more than that. So if you manage to get to act by the end of the year, that would be absolutely extraordinary. And I think if that happened, it would be very much to do with the role of this committee, the fact that you have this space where you can talk directly with the politicians. So that's really interesting.
Let me just qualify. We actually drafted our citizen-led legislation and started collecting. We've been at this for 7 years. So we started the process back in 2020. We got approved to actually start collecting signatures. We submitted in January of 2022, and it was only January of 2024. Okay. And as for the actual that we were part of the ad hoc committee, it's the ad hoc committee, and we've got two major subcommittees. Now, the ad hoc committee meets every week, every Friday.
Wow.
Okay, and it's 4 to 5 hours. It's intense. It's a huge opportunity cost. And the subcommittees meet 2 to 3 times a week, and some of these meetings last an entire day, sometimes into the night. And weekends. This coming weekend is a full weekend of actually drafting. And it's the citizens that have turned up for most of it. Okay. The 39 committee members, I can tell you, I've never seen 39 people turn up except the very first day. Okay. So the responsibility is quite lacking, particularly of many other representatives that are not citizens, which is unfortunate. Because that's their full-time job, not ours. Let me reiterate that.
And that's really interesting. And I think in the way you portrayed it now, it just shows the reality of doing these initiatives. It's not easy, and it really is driven by the commitment of citizens and organizations. We've got a question. We're sort of getting to the end of our seminar.
Actually, this is a quick question to ask, because you've been looking at this, and I've been quite curious on this. The way we're working is actually absolutely abnormal, right? Because nobody can devote this type of time, and the opportunity cost at a personal level for all 13 of us is humongous, and it's actually honestly unjust. I know other countries, for example, I know in Taiwan, when they're trying to push things through, actually the process is a lot more equitable. They're actually bringing citizens as experts that you're actually hired to actually deliberate on things, right? And then they divvy it out and actually have a referendum for citizens to vote on important measures. There must be more. There must be better, more fair, more equitable, processes. And I'm sure the way done in Thailand is absolutely abnormal and completely out of the books.
It's a trade-off, isn't it? Do you give a role to citizens and organizations into the process, or do you not give that role? If you give that role, then you're very likely to make it very very costly, very time consuming for the organizations. So most processes, they don't give such a role to the civil society. They make it more as a decision-making process for the MPs, for the politicians. So that is sort of easier to manage, and it's more, it's less time consuming. On the other hand, it means that civil society has got much less control of it. But yeah, there's all sorts of ways of bringing in a civil society through, as I say, deliberative initiatives, if you want to, or public hearings, or all of that. But yeah, it does sound quite unusual, your system. It does sound really, really unusual. And I think that's what's so interesting. And I really, yeah, I'm very impressed with your commitment to it, and the time you've sent to it. We're running out of time, so I'm just going to ask a question. There's another question about, has implementation of the Clean Act been costed? How has this been done? So that would be just a quick answer from you, whether it has been costed, and if so, how. And then we have Cedric asking a question, who's a parliamentary official from the Senate of Cameroon, an expert on parliamentary diplomacy, and is asking whether citizen legislative initiative can address foreign policy issues. And if some of these bills do not become law bills, he would like to know if there's a renewal process for this initiative similar to the ones applied to parliamentary bills. So I think you've sort of answered the last bit, in terms of they can carry on as long as you talk to the MPs and they bring them back. In terms of whether they address foreign policy issues, I guess there's those conditions that you outline, isn't there? And I guess that could include foreign policy issues. I don't know. So I'll leave you with these two last questions, if that's okay. Has it been costed? And can it address foreign affairs policy issues? Thank you.
On the costing, I presume the question surrounds the cost for all the individual members in being part of this committee. I guess the opportunity cost involved, the manpower cost, right?
Yeah. And even collecting the signatures and all of that, I would include everything, really.
Yeah. We've thought, actually for us, we've thought about doing that, and I'm sure it would be in many, many millions of baht worth. Because no, we've got lawyers working on law firms. We, all of us, our opportunity cost is extremely high.
Yeah.
Right? I'm a financial expert, so
yeah,
my opportunity cost is not cheap.
No, of course, yeah.
We've got a medical doctor on our team. His opportunity cost is extremely high. It was an extremely costly process. We have not costed it out. I think in terms of, and then beyond this, for example, we actually have some of our members actually travel to attend. They live in the outside of Bangkok.
Yeah.
So their opportunity cost is immense, and it's unfortunate. Like, they only get partial cost coverage for actually the transportation and accommodation costs. So they're paying out of their own personal savings, which is actually completely unjust. For doing this type of work.
Yeah.
As for the international
foreign affairs
kind of thing, well, obviously with when you talk about air pollution, clean air issues, there is a big transboundary element to it.
Yeah.
And so the implications down the road is there will be an international implication to this, but at this juncture, we're very focused on actually developing a legislation that manages clean air within Thailand.
Yeah.
Because if we don't have that, honestly, we don't have a seat on the table. How can you start negotiating any type of anything with any of our neighbors when we ourselves don't have legislation to even manage our own emissions? And then obviously there's elements related to transboundary pollution that's addressed through this.
Yeah, so it's got international implications, and I guess it's those conditions you outlined at the beginning of your presentation that need to be met. We're coming up to time, I'm afraid. Before I ask you all to give some feedback, just some announcements and some thank yous. So this recording will be available. As I'm talking, you've got the poll in front of you. If you want to do the poll, just give some feedback. This recording is going to be available on YouTube, and you'll be emailed links to it, and there'll also be a summary on the Public Engagement Hub LinkedIn page. And I'd just like to announce the next Public Engagement Hub seminar, which will be on the 20th of November, and we'll focus then on the Mexican Congress, on developments, innovations and challenges in public engagement in a Mexican Congress. So we're going to a completely different area of the world to look at public engagement in a much more holistic way in a country that also has faced a lot of challenges. And just thank yous to everyone who attended, and thank you to our interpreters for doing an incredible job and being able to offer this in a different language. And of course, thank you to our speakers. And if you could all show your appreciation either with real clapping or reactions, however you want to do, it's absolutely fine. And I'll attempt to say again your names. So Professor Kanongnij and Weenarin, thank you so much for your presentation. It's been really, really interesting. I've learned a lot from this. So I think that's it. And hopefully we'll see you all on the 20th of November for the next Hub seminar. Thank you.